Hi, fourth grade. It is time for Homer P. Figg, chapters 28, 29, and 30. We're getting close to the end. It'll probably be right up to the last week of school, so please stick with me so you can find out what happens, because this is a long book, and even though I'm doing 3 chapters each time, it's taking a lot longer than I thought it would to finish. So anyway, I'm going to start with this one, and this is chapter 28, and it's called Like a Squirrel Up a Tree. In less time than it takes to whistle Yankee Doodle Dandy, we're surrounded by a squad of grim-faced soldiers on horseback, all of them pointing long rifles at our faces. "Keep your hands in plain view," one of them shouts. "Anybody move and they're done for." The captain dismounts from his horse. He's tall, fine-looking fellow, taller than even Professor Fleabottom, with piercing dark eyes and a nose like a hawk. Like the hawk, he has a look of danger, of a dangerous creature, one who may attack without warning. He adjusts the cuffs of his white leather gloves, then strides up to the campfire and demands a cup of coffee. "Are these true coffee beans?" he wants to know, seizing a battered tin mug, "or have you taken up the rebel habit of adding chicory?" Tally, who is tending to the fire, looks like he don't know what to say. "Cat got your tongue?" the captain demands, "or is it General Lee who's in charge of your tongue?" Tally glances helplessly at Professor Fleabottom, who gathers himself up and says, "We beg your kindness, Captain. The man is simple-minded. Your sudden arrival has confused him." The captain snorts and puts his hand upon his pistol, holstered at his waist. "Simple-minded, is he? I doubt that. Maybe the recruiters fall for such nonsense, but not me." "Please, you are welcome to coffee, or indeed any food that we have," the professor says, sounding rather grand. Would your men like biscuits and jam, sir? Our cook may be simple, but he makes a fine biscuit. Or, if you prefer, we have sufficient bottles of my special elixir." The captain gulps down his coffee, spits some of it back in, and drops the mug in the fire. He strides up full up to the professor, so close that they almost bump chests. "You'd addle the brains of my men with moonshine, would you?" he asks very quietly. "Is that your plan of escape? So you can sneak away?" "Elixir is for what ails you," responds Professor, holding his ground. "Ah," roars the captain, "not for my men." Minnie dabs a hanky to her eyes, weeping. Bern and Tally both look like they want to bolt, but don't dare for fear of having a bullet in the back. Mr. Bobbins just looks confused, and me, I'm thinking when the shooting starts, I'll climb a tree and hide in the branches like a squirrel. The captain whips a folded piece of paper out of his jacket and reads from it. "Reginald Robertson Crockett, also known as Fenton J. Fleabottom, as the duly authorized representative of the United States of America, I place you under arrest for the felony crime of treason." Looking up from the paper, he adds, the specific and mortal crime of passing military intelligence to the enemy. Seize him." 4 soldiers grab the professor, one from each limb. Not that he's fighting them. The professor looks disappointed in the poor captain, but he don't struggle as they slip irons around his wrists and ankles. "My dear captain, there has been a mistake. I freely confess to selling elixir to the troops. You have me there, fair and square. I further admit that what I call elixir is really for the mind that will be flavoring a red clover cough syrup. But never would I betray my country, not for $1 million in gold." The captain narrows his hawk-looking eyes, looking crafty. "I believe you, sir, that you would not willingly betray your country. You have that air about you. But the truth is, your country is the Confederacy, and therefore you are a spy and a traitor, and you will pay the price." "That's a lie. Bring me a Bible and I'll swear upon it." The captain smiles and leans in, his sharp little chin not an inch from the professor's yellow mustache. "I am not so easily persuaded. It is well known that men who swear lying oaths upon the Bible believe that God is on their side and will protect them despite their lies. But that will not answer in this instance. You have we have you dead to rights, Mr. Crockett, and are well known in Virginia as a staunch advocate of the Southern Rebellion, and Union spy catchers have been on your trail for months. The professor looks puzzled. Crockett? Who is this Crockett you refer to? My name is Fleabottom. You have mistaken me for another man. That is your defense? Mistaken identity? My defense is that I am innocent, the professor protests. What exactly is it you think I've done? The captain stands back, readjusting his white leather gloves. Do you deny that you have been making inquiries about the movement of troops? Of course I deny it. It's an absurd idea. I never... Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yes, that has to be it. I know what has happened. Why you have been deceived. The professor is smiling now, looking much relieved. It's the boy, over there, the small one, cowering about by the elm tree, Homer Figg by name. He's much concerned with finding his older brother, who was sworn in as a replacement troop and may be underage. The captain turns and fixes his hungry, hawkish eyes on me. Come here, boy. I shamble forward. The way he stares at me so hard and cold turns my stomach to water and makes my knees shaky. Is this true? He demands. Have you asked this man to help you find your brother? Yes, sir. And this man, who calls himself Professor Fleabottom, he has on your behalf made many inquiries that touch upon Union troops' movements, interviewed and interrogated soldiers and officers after giving them an elixir to help you find your brother? Yes, sir. He's been very kind and helpful, sir. Indeed, says the captain, stroking his chin with his fingers on his white gloves. No doubt he is kind when it suits him. That much I will not dispute. So you understand that it is simply an unfortunate misunderstanding, says the professor, holding out his wrists to be freed. Such things readily occur in a time of war, Captain. I assure you there was no hard feelings on my part. The captain snorts, amused at the professor. Very good of you, sir. No doubt, being a Virginian, you are a man of courage and honor. You will have need of both when they drag you to the gallows. But, Captain, surely you see that I was only trying to help the boy. The captain shrugs. The boy was your excuse? The game is up, Mr. Crockett. He jabs a finger at one of his men. Sergeant, produce the prisoner. The horses make way for another horse, a pony that has been kept behind and out of sight. A man has been tied face down across the back of the pony. He appears alive but barely conscious and shows the marks of a terrible beating. Both eyes blackened and his face swollen up like an overripe melon. But still I recognize the mysterious rider who came into the camp that night and took the dispatches from the professor. The poor man must hurt in every bone in his body, but he don't make a sound. Upon seeing the injured man, Professor Fleabottom heaves a sigh of defeat. His mustache droops and his shoulders sag like somebody let the air out of him. The captain says, I see you don't deny your own brother, Mr. Levi Crockett, soon to be of late Richmond, Virginia. He was shadowed these parts a few months ago, as have you been, and he is finally caught red-handed with your dispatches in his pack. The dispatch, describing Union positions in great detail, was written in your hand and seen to be delivered to your brother in the dead of night. On this, there can be no dispute and no excuse or clever lie that will change it. Levi, I am sorry, the professor calls out, a catch in his great booming voice. The captain nods, satisfied. The traitor's noose will soon be upon your necks. Make peace with your maker, Mr. Crockett, and prepare to go to a better place. Murderers! Minnie screams, flinging a pot at the captain. Killers! The pot lands harmlessly at the captain's feet. His eyes gleam like black pebbles at the bottom of a cold stream, and he seems very pleased with himself. Arrest them all, he commands, the tattooed harridan and the draft-dodging jugglers, and don't forget the boy. Before he gets to boy, I am up a tree and into the basket beneath the swaying balloon, fast as any squirrel and twice as scared. Far below, at the base of the elm, a couple of the soldiers laugh and argue about who will climb up the tree to claim me. Why, he ain't much bigger than a pint of spit, someone cackles, and they all laugh so hard and have to hold their bellies. They never notice Tally's kitchen knife is missing, so the laugh is on them when I cut the anchor rope and make my escape in the giant silk balloon made for the Union Army. The last thing I hear before the wind carries me away is Mr. Bobbins screaming for his loved Tilda. Chapter 29. Like a bird with a broken wing. You can only imagine. Until that fateful balloon ride, the highest I'd ever been was to the peak of Squint's hay barn. I was 5 or 6 years old and somehow got in mind to see the world or maybe catch one of the pigeons that hopped along the ridge. Truth is, I don't recall exactly what was in my head at the time. All I remembered is Harold in the yard below pleading for me to come down, and how it amused me to hear him begging. It was a mean thing, wanting to scare my big brother who had always been so kind to me, but it felt good too, like I enjoyed testing how much he loved me. Eventually I came down on my own, none of the worse for the wear, and Harold swore if I ever did such a thing again, climbing that rickety old roof like a monkey, he'd kill me with his own hands. But I knew he didn't mean that, and that made me feel good too. I mention this because I scampered into the balloon with nothing in my head but the desire to get away and no idea what it meant to cut the anchor line. I wasn't thinking about how to get down, that's for sure. Without the weight of the anchor, the balloon shoots straight up into the sky, rising so fast it leaves my stomach back on the elm tree. It's like being on a rocket without the sparkles. By the time I dare to peek over the sides of the basket, the ground is already falling away. Professor Fleabottom and the others are no bigger than tiny little ants and getting smaller fast. I'm heading up to heaven with no way back. All of the sudden, the wind howls like a shrieking bird, making a balloon sway violently. The basket thrashes down and sideways and up. 1 second I'm screaming into the wind directly under the balloon, and the next I'm looking straight down at the ground, clinging to the basket with all my fingers and every last toe. I hang on for dear life. A giant balloon named Tilda wants to cough me out like a fur ball from a sick cat. About the time my heart is fixing to stop, the basket swings back under the balloon and holds steady more, gives me a chance to catch my breath in the thin air and to realize that not all the shivering comes from being afraid. The closer you get to heaven, the colder it gets. With things settling down for the time being, I search around the bottom of the basket looking for something useful. The kitchen knife has fallen away, but lashed to the framework of the basket is a canteen of water and a packet of hardtack biscuits. Not that I'm hungry. You need a stomach to be hungry, and mine was left behind. After a while, 100 years or so, I find the courage to peek over the side. Big mistake. This high up, you can't see people or animals, and the cornfields look like ragged green patches on a big old quilt. Train tracks are like stitches in the ground, mending the world together. Beyond the forest and the fields and villages that look like toys, and the shaky silver rivers glinting in the sun, the great curved edge of the earth blends into the sky. That's where heaven and earth must meet, in a haze of blue mist at the end of the far world. I fly for hours, it seems, and going west to chase the sun, the great balloon and I, as if to make the day last longer. You get used to anything, I suppose, even flying high above the earth, and after a while it comes to feel natural, almost like I belong in the air, floating higher than a bird can fly. Looking over the world, it feels like I'm more than a runaway orphan boy, like I'm bigger than Homer Figg from Pine Swamp, Maine. Like I've somehow become everybody that ever lived, and we're all just watching the earth like a mother hen watching over her eggs, which is a pretty crazy way to think. How could I be everybody that ever lived when I'm just one small person? Must be the thin air putting wild thoughts in my head, or fumes from the great balloon. Speaking of the balloon, it keeps changing shape very gently. Shaped by the wind, I supposed, but it almost looks like it's breathing, little ripples moving along the surface like waves in a silk pond. And if you stare hard enough, there's a face in the balloon, just like there's a face in the moon or the clouds, a face that keeps changing and growing the longer you look, a face that's trying to tell me something important. Tilda is talking to me, only I can't hear her words. Then I realize that what looks like a smiling mouth in the balloon's face is really a tear in the silk. A tear in the silk that's flapping as the gas escapes. I've been staring at the balloon so long, daydreaming about the face in the clouds and such, that I forgot to look down. And when I do, peering fearfully over the edge of the basket, the ground is coming up fast. We're falling from the sky like a bird with a broken wing. Chapter 30. When the screaming comes inside. As we drop closer to the ground, everything speeds up. It's like the earth is turning faster, whipping great trees at the basket and barely missing. We're flying over a rocky field. Tilda and me. Fields where men on horseback chase one another, firing guns and waving swords. Suddenly the ground explodes under the horses, and man and beast vanish in a flash of bloody stained lightning. They're over a battlefield. That's not good. We're being swept over a battlefield, and what I thought was thunder and lightning is artillery shells blowing the world to pieces. Right about then, the rip in the silk catches fire and the fabric starts to melt. I scramble over the side of the basket, clinging on with my fingers, deciding when to jump. All I catch is a glimpse of green water when the balloon is dissolving into red-hot flames. Making up my mind is no longer an option. I must let go and take my chances. I drop through the air like a screaming stone, plunging feet first into a scummy green frog pond. When you're falling from 100 feet or more and the sky is on fire, even scummy water is better than solid ground. At least the fall didn't kill me. Trouble is, I can't find the surface. Can't tell which way is up because my fists are full of mud. Like I've been clawing at the bottom and my legs are caught in a tangle of lily pad roots that want to tug me down. That's a little scary. I'm trying to breathe the warm, slimy water. If frogs can do it, why not me? When something grabs a hold of my hair and yanks me up to the sunlight. Can't see right off because I'm coughing so hard, but after a few minutes of having the water shook out of me, I realize I've been saved by a scrawny little man in a gray uniform. He's missing his front teeth and his tongue keeps sliding over the gap as he shakes me. When he hands me over to a bunch of men in gray uniforms that have been refreshing their horses at the edge of the pond, cavalry from the look, they talk funny, kind of slow and linting, but I can understand them well enough. Little critter fell out of the sky, he did. Yes, sir, like he's been shot from a cannon. Weren't no cannon, son. Here comes he comes by way of surveillance balloon. That's what's left of it. It's burning in those trees over yonder. Is that a fact? Yes, sir. Must be a Yankee spy getting to fix on our position. Sir, he ain't but a boy. Another more powerful voice cuts through the argument. What we have here? Report. Rough hands pass me along to where a beautifully uniformed man sits on a horse, hands folded over the pommel. Looks like he lives in the saddle and likes it there. He wears an elegant cape and a rakish hat decorated with a long plumed feather, a fancy sword hanging from his waist. Yankee boy fell out of a balloon, General Jeb, sir. The dashing young general leans down from the saddle to study me. Makes a show of tugging at his thick, full beard. Might be a boy, he drawls, a twinkle in his eye, and maybe he's a midget spy, dressed to look like a boy. I wouldn't put it past them clever Yankees to fool us with a small person and whatnot. Yes, sir. The men are grinning as if they know their general likes to make jokes. What's your name, small boy? The general demands. I've miles to ride and haven't the time to stomach for any more tomfoolery. Tell me your name. Homer Figg. And I'm no small person. Yankee for sure. Take him to the bull pit. Turns out the bull pit is where prisoners get confined. And in this case, the pit is a stall of an old barn that's been temporarily requisitioned by the Confederate forces who stand guard outside. Requisitioned being another word for stole, which is what armies do when they need things. All of which explains to me the bright young fellow named Jonathan Griswold, who says he's a correspondent for the Valley Spirit, a newspaper in Shammersburg. I should be in the office setting type, he explains, but our fine little city has lately been overrun by invading rebels. They requisitioned all of the bread and grain and every spare saddle and all of the horseshoes and nails for the horseshoes and looked about ready to requisition the printing press and me. Seems a good opportunity to venture out and see the war. Mr. Jonathan Gridwell is has a mousy brown mustache, a pair of reading spectacles hanging from a ribbon around his skinny neck, and a whole cavalry of ideas and opinions at his command. He says, I rode out from the little town called Gettysburg, expecting to find the Union Army, and was intercepted by Stuart's raiders, who have no particular affection for Yankee newspapermen. I take it you were seized by the same fellows. The man had a feather in his hat. Jeb Stuart himself, the newspaperman says, sounding impressed. They say he can ride circles around the Union Army and will report back to General Robert E. Lee before the main battle starts. He called me a midget, I complained, still incensed. A midget and a spy. The newspaperman chuckles. Did he now? They've taken away my notebook, but I must remember that. A midget and a spy. That's an improvement on the tales about girls who disguise themselves as soldiers and dogs who save their masters. I can see you are not a midget, sir, but if, as they tell me, you arrived in a surveillance balloon, then surely you really are a spy of sorts, and too young for hanging, lucky for you. Outside the stall, the Confederate guards are acting ever so casual, smoking their pipes and complaining about the rations. But I can tell they're keeping keen ear for our conversation. So I decided to tell the newspaperman about the traveling Professor Fleabottom, and he's really a rebel patriot arrested by the Union Army, and how I escaped in a stolen balloon. Said his true name is Crockett, Reginald Robert Crockett. I say as my tale concludes. He's got a brother, Levi. They beat him up something awful. Crockett, you say, the newspaperman explains. That's a famous name in the South. Was your medicine showman related to Davy Crockett that died at the Alamo? Must have been, I say, working up some enthusiasm for the idea. In fact, I'm sure he is. I once saw him kill a mountain lion with his bare hands. Must be the Crockett blood. Making stuff up, isn't he? A mountain lion, extraordinary. Bare hands, you say. Of course, it's not an old lion missing. It's an old lion missing most of his teeth, escaped from the circus. And if you were employed by Mr. Crockett, you also known as Mr. Fleabottom, you might say so. I say grandly. I was the star of the show. Star of the show? In what capacity? I played the amazing wolf boy, raised by wolves, and so on. The newspaperman is nodding feverishly, as if anxious to write it down, if only he had a pen and paper. The Confederate guards lean closer, hanging on my every word, just as I had planned. Of course, I wasn't really raised by wolves, I confide. I'm a Figg. You probably heard of the Figgs. We're the richest family in north of Boston. Figgs own most of the timber, railroads, a good portion of the mines, and a fleet of schooners, plus too many farms and factories to bother mentioning. Why, we even owned some slaves, I add, eyeing the guards. Dozens of them, hundreds probably, if you took the trouble to count. We Figgs favor that. My father was the governor, and he wrote a law saying that every man had to own them. Owning slaves is what makes America great. Everybody knows that. Everybody but that fool Lincoln. My father says if Lincoln was to take away our slaves, he'd chop old Abe down like Washington chopped down a cherry tree. Now here's the problem with all of this. He's saying he's from the North, and in the North, they didn't have slavery. So somebody's going to catch on. Would he really? Asked the newspaperman, looking aghast. Course he would. Give up our slaves. Never. It's slaves that make us rich, slaves that make us happy, slaves that make the pancakes and churn the butter and boil the syrup. My father once gave me a slave whose job was to follow me around and sweep away my footsteps so I could pretend to be invisible. That's how many slaves we owned, that he could spare one for erasing footprints. I see, says the newspaperman doubtfully. Point is, we Figgs may be from Maine, but our hearts lie with the Southern rebels. Yes, sir. Fact is, Most every slave I ever saw, I did own. Hundreds of them, you say. In Maine, with your, wealthy family? Not wealthy, rich. Rich is better. The Confederate guards are nodding at one another, and one of them turns to leave. I figure he's off to tell his boss that they have put a true friend of the South in jail by mistake. That's when the screaming starts and ruins my plans. A terrible screaming that puts a chill down my spine and makes my knees shiver. A screaming that makes the guards forget the amazing story of the boy in the balloon. What's that? I asked the newspaper man, whose face has gone gray. I think I know, he says. He puts himself up to the barrel window in one corner of the stall and has a look. He drops back down and wipes his sweaty hands on his trouser legs. The wounded, he explains. The battle must have begun. They're bringing the wounded to the barn. And then the door busts open and the screaming comes in. So, in this part of the story, when he gets taken, he knows that the guards are listening. So he's trying to get the Southern Confederates to sympathize with him and let him go. He doesn't really believe what he's saying about slavery, which we disagree with completely. But he is using that as a way to get their attention, so maybe they'll let him go. Problem is, the battle had begun, as they talked about when he was flying over the battlefield, and now they're bringing the wounded into the barn. So they've kind of forgotten his story, and all of that's going to go by the wayside. But it was a big contradiction because he lives in Maine, and in Maine they don't have slavery. So anyway, a couple more chapters to go, and then we will finish this one. This was a long one, so thanks for sticking with me. Miss you guys. Bye.